It is my pleasure to be this morning with several personalities, thinkers, and important persons that are contributing with their ideas to reflect about a new globality. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Rocco Ronchi. He's a PhD by the Università Statale di Milano. He's a professor at the Università degli Studi dell'Aquila di Abruzzo and the Institute of Applied Psychoanalytical Research in Milan. He's a scholar on communication and language and an authority on the work of Henri Bergson, and he collaborates with the RAI. It is also my pleasure to introduce to you the sociologist and philosopher Hartmut Rosa. He is professor at the Friedrich Schiller University, Jena, and the director of the Max Weber Center for Advanced Social and Cultural Studies at Erfurt. He is considered one of the representatives of the new critical theory. He works with the sociology of time. Welcome, and it is my pleasure to share a moment with you, because I think as a humanity, we all have maybe a duty to reflect. Maybe also it is a commonplace to say that 2020 changed everyone's point of view. But although that could be a commonplace, it's also maybe a duty for every one of us to think about several repercussions. One of them has to be with the global arena. So I would like to ask you about what are your ideas about this new globality? What is your position? So first, I would like to begin with Dr. Rocco Ronchi.
Sono molto onorato di poter discutere con colleghi così prestigiosi e per rispondere alla sua domanda io partirei da una prima considerazione. Io vorrei considerare la pandemia sotto il profilo dell'evento e non sotto il profilo del semplice fatto. Gli eventi non sono fatti, gli eventi producono trasformazioni che prima del loro accadere non erano nemmeno possibili e quindi creano qualcosa di nuovo. Ecco perché io vorrei riflettere sulle virtù dell'evento, cioè sulla potenza trasformativa che l'evento pandemia produce e che ci riguarda tutti. E credo che la pandemia abbia segnato a livello planetario l'insorgenza della vita, della nuda vita come posta in gioco della nuova politica mondiale. Ora si dirà che il Covid porta alla morte, non porta alla vita, e questo è indubbio. Però il virus, il Covid, l'evento pandemico ci presenta, per così dire, la faccia oscura della vita, cioè la sua potenza non umana, la spontaneità mostruosa del vivente, che è indifferente alle finalità umane. Ecco, allora rispetto alla domanda che mi è stata posta in apertura, io comincerei a rispondere così. Il pianeta si è unificato sotto il segno del virus e questa unificazione ha avuto luogo sul piano della sensibilità, sul piano del sentire, ed è quindi stata una unificazione che, come dire, più potente, più forte di quella che può aver luogo soltanto sul piano del concetto. Grazie alla pandemia noi non sappiamo semplicemente che siamo uno, ma lo sentiamo immediatamente. Ecco allora quella che io presenterei come la prima grande virtù del virus: unificazione del pianeta sul piano della sensibilità e non semplicemente sul piano del concetto, sul piano del sapere. Un'ultima cosa, prima di lasciare la parola ai miei colleghi e di riprendere eventualmente la discussione più avanti, sul piano politico, la risposta alla pandemia sembra confermare, la cosa è molto problematica, sembra confermare la diagnosi di Michel Foucault, espressa nel celebre corso del 1976, Bisogna difendere la società. Perché sembra confermarla? Perché cosa aveva detto Foucault? Foucault aveva detto che il potere nella modernità è un biopotere e che il biopotere non si esercita più sulla coppia individuo-società, non è più un potere semplicemente disciplinare rispetto ai corpi, ma si esercita sull'uomo come specie. Cioè il biopotere prende in carico la vita, prende in carico i processi biologici e li sottopone a una regolazione e ad una amministrazione. Cioè l'oggetto del biopotere è la popolazione, non l'individuo. Ecco, questa trasformazione da popolo a popolazione è un'altra delle scoperte traumatiche alle quali siamo stati costretti dal virus e pone grossi problemi d'ordine politico, grossi problemi d'ordine filosofico, ed è su questo che probabilmente bisognerebbe ragionare per considerare l'orizzonte che si sta aprendo per il nostro immediato futuro. Concludo dicendo che allora un'altra virtù del virus consiste proprio in questo, cioè consiste nel fatto che la pandemia funziona come una sorta di critica dell'ideologia, no? Che non ha più bisogno nemmeno di una pedagogia, no? per aver luogo, ma che si realizza immediatamente, no? Sul piano della sensibilità. La pandemia in qualche modo ci ha spogliato delle nostre, come dire, delle ultime illusioni di fronte al vero, no? E se prima del virus potevamo essere ancora, come dire, illuderci ancora di essere un popolo, che è una categoria eminentemente storica, adesso, dopo la pandemia, e grazie in un certo senso alla pandemia, ci siamo scoperti, che ci piaccia o che non ci piaccia, popolazione. Questa io credo che sia un'altra delle virtù di questo evento sulle quali dobbiamo riflettere, perché indubbiamente pone enormi problemi sul piano politico e sul piano etico.
Grazie, Dr. Ronchi. Now it is my pleasure to also introduce to you Dr. Mohamed ElBaradei. He is a diplomat, jurist, and politician. Dr. ElBaradei was Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency. He was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize in 2005, jointly with the agency, thanks to his efforts to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. He served as Vice President of Egypt on interim basis on 2013.
It's a pleasure to be with you today and discuss the state of our world during and after the pandemic. The state of our world today is grim. Wars, poverty, and tyranny are on the rise. The rule of law among nations is taking a backseat, and the global governance paradigm is teetering. Over 30 years ago, after the end of the Cold War, we dreamed of a new world order. This regrettably has not materialized. Most of the goals we set for ourselves to build a better world the Sustainable Development Goals, as we call them, would fall short of implementation by 2030. There exists a dichotomy between our rhetoric and our actions. All the major threats we face today, including climate change, weapons of mass destruction, infectious disease, terrorism, organized crimes, illicit drugs, and cybersecurity, do not respect borders, nor do require passport or visas. All are in urgent need of close international cooperation. The chaos of coping with the pandemic, as we see today, is a painful case in point. Despite this stark reality, platforms and institutions for international cooperation, such as the UN system of organizations, have been steadily eroding in recent years. The increasing polarization and paralysis, together with dwindling resources, have undermined their authority and diminished their effectiveness. We are, in my view, at a fork in the road. Do we work together as one human family that shares common fate, or do we continue on our separate ways, to each his own? If we opt for a sustainable road, we need to look at the big picture, take the long view, overcome our distrust, and try to reconcile our differences. Importantly, we need to alter our mindset to comprehend that basic values like human dignity, equality, and justice, in short supply today, are not just ethical, but are key to our common survival. And we also need to understand that subscribing to these values will not be accomplished by a zero-sum mentality, and will not go a long way if we prioritize geostrategic and economic interests over human life. Our recent record with respect to the treatment of refugees, respect of international humanitarian law, caring for the poor, or coming to the rescue of the persecuted is dismal and callous. We need to fix a broken and dangerous collective security system, epitomized by the dysfunctional Security Council. Demonizing the other and reliance on military power should give way to building trust through dialogue as we confront our common threats. Two colossal threats are of significant urgency because of their current or potential damage, which is irreversible: climate change and the nuclear arms race, anchored in the insane doctrine of mutual assured destruction, MAD as we call it. Our definition of security should expand beyond protecting borders to encompass human security, the raison d'etre of the state, making sure that basic human needs such as food, health, education, and employment are reliably met for all. Policies like universal basic income and wealth tax to attain some social justice could go a long way towards advancing these goals. Poverty, inequality, corruption are fodder for populism and authoritarianism. The discontent is bolstered by rising distrust in the political class, state capture by a wealthy elite or a special interest groups, and the feeling of many that they are not adequately represented and their voices are not being heard. The vicious onslaught of populism and authoritarianism on democracy requires policies to protect the democratic processes and efforts to calibrate the balance between direct and representative democracy. The blatant violation of human rights, such as the crackdown on journalists and dissidents, the persecution of ethnic and religious minorities, and extrajudicial killings, to name a few, are often met with empty expressions of concern. These violations must be brought to the top of international agenda if we are to maintain a modicum of humanity. We need to restore legitimacy and effectiveness to national and international institutions to avoid regression into isolationism and to address globalization's downsides. We need to tear down the walls that separate us, physical and mental. We need to embark on a cross-cultural dialogue to understand where each is coming from. An engaged civil society is essential in all this, and access to accurate information, not fake news, is vital. The recent mobilization led by young people to protect the environment provides hope and optimism that we can fix the broken paradigm, rendering it humane, just, and sustainable for all.
Thank you, Dr. Hartmut. Rosa. Please.
I mean, this. I really believe it's true that the virus put us in a new state of globality, right? In a new way of being together in this world, but also in a new way of being separate. It's very interesting, right? While on the one hand, we are in a very similar situation, we are very distinct, right? Because we cannot travel to each other, we cannot see each other. So on the one hand, the world has grown much more distinct, much more separate than it was before the virus. But on the other hand, it has become much more joint, because I think what the virus has done really is created a really unique situation, which we did not have, maybe we never had before in the world, or maybe in the Second World War or something. Namely, it created a kind of joint attention on an almost global sphere, or actually on the global sphere, right? Wherever you go now, whenever you can check the media in New Zealand, in Australia, in Japan, or in China, in Mexico, or in Brazil, or in Argentina, or wherever you look, or in Kenya, in Egypt, the focus, the attention is on the virus, on Corona, right? And it's not just a joint attention worldwide. Humanity is threatened by a new virus, but it's also joint emotion, right? Because it's this emotion of a threat. Something is threatening us, right? Something is endangering our way of living. So we have almost in some sense, joint attention and joint emotion. I mean, the World Soccer Football Championship did something similar, but only for soccer fans, right? And not in all parts of the world. But the virus really has created all kind of global consciousness and a global emotion, and also kind of, on one hand, you could say joint reaction, because everywhere in the world you now see people wearing masks, right? And you have the rules of social distancing. And actually we also had the closing of borders. So of course that indicates it's not joint reaction, it's similar reaction on a very non-joint level, right? I think we have, as we have heard before with Dr. ElBaradei and Dr. Ronchi, there is also kind of very nationalistic reaction, right? So on the one, so the reaction to this global problem, right, is very nationalistic closing. So borders closed, and connections closed, and reactions were very egoistic and nationalistic. So on the one hand, one could be very surprised, right? Why is it that we react to a global, clearly a global threat and a global phenomenon on very particularistic, very egoistic and nationalistic? And I think the answer to this is rather clear, because what we see on the political level and also on the social level is a kind of desperate attempt to take back control over something from something which is the ultimate non-controllable, right? For me, actually, the virus is a kind of paradigmatic symbol or a manifestation of indisponibility or non-controllability. That's what interests me very much as a sociologist and philosopher at this point, right? Because my take is really that in modern society, actually on a global level, what we tried to do for many years now, nationally as well as globally or universally, also on a EU level, is the attempt to increase our control, our domination of the world. Like, for example, science is one way of doing it, right? We want to know everything, explore everything, but then we also want to use it, and that's where technology comes in, right? Gain technological control over nature, over processes in the world, and so on. And also legal control, right? Whatever happens, whatever event there might be, there should be a rule, an international rule, a national rule at least, and something of that sort. And we try to increase economic control over poverty, but also over other things. I mean, money is attractive to modern human beings because it gives you control over an increasing share of the world, and so on. And in my interpretation of what's going on in the world is that there is a very strange dialectic. There is a flip side, right? As we increase control on the one hand, there's always the threat that we lose it on the other hand, and we feel totally powerless, right? You actually see this on the everyday level of your life, right? For example, with the smartphones and with the smart homes and the smart cars, we have become almost omnipotent, right? With a click of my hand, of my thumb, I can make it bright light or dark night, or I can make it very hot in the room or very cold in the room. I actually can make it very loud, play loud music or play soft music, and so on. So I'm almost omnipotent, but only until the battery fails or the electronic breaks down. And then I might be unable to close the window, right? This is a very unpleasant situation. Or you might be locked in the room and you cannot open it, right? Because the electronic fails, or I cannot turn off the music, something of this sort. So it's omnipotence on the one hand and powerlessness on the other. And I think with this we see with this Dr. ElBaradei's topic too, right? With our power, we increased our power in nuclear power, right? Because we have became capable of splitting the atom and thereby gaining control over matter's inside, so to speak, gaining control from the inside over matter. But this created the monster of uncontrollable nuclear chain reactions in an atomic bomb or in a nuclear power station which explodes, right? So the almost omnipotence, we can control it from the inside, created powerlessness on the other hand. We are the victims. And by the way, I mean, this is the case for all of our relationship towards nature. Modernity, for me, in my interpretation of it, means, or has meant to increase our power over nature. We can use it, we extract all the resources from the interior of matter, of nature, of Mother Earth, right? And we control it, we explore it, we use it in very many ways, and thereby, as we have become almost omnipotent over nature, we destroy it, and then we are threatened to be destroyed by the reaction of it in global warming, for example, right, in the ecological disaster we are facing. So it's always omnipotence and powerlessness, which is the diametrical opposition, and we increase always both. And I believe, and that's the final point I want to make, even with respect to the democratic or the political crisis we fail all over the world. You see exactly the same dialectical opposition, that on the one hand, there is the promise of popular sovereignty. All power should be with the people. That's the promise of modern politics, of sovereignty, and also of democracy, right? It should be we, the people, who have control of our conditions of life. But then we experience that it's not us who controls the way we live. It's the financial markets, for example, right? It's the dynamics of scientific, technological developments, and even the proper logic of the media, which we can no longer control. And the right-wing populists all over the world, I would really claim, from Donald Trump to Bolsonaro to Modi in India, or Duterte in the Philippines, or Boris Johnson in England, they promised to take back control. That was the Brexit slogan. Take back control. It's the promise that we can politically rule and dominate the world. And I think COVID makes it very clear to us that this is an illusion. There can be no complete control over the world. So COVID might help us to gain a new understanding of sovereignty. It's not having complete control, but being capable to listen and to respond, right? That's not control and domination. And this should also be the paradigm, I believe, for international cooperation. Not dominate the others through whatever rules, but listen to their ideas, their conceptions, their suggestions in the corona crisis as elsewhere, and try to find solutions for this. So I still hope very much that the crisis can be the starting point for something new, as Hannah Arendt, the political philosopher, says, right? The human beings have the capacity of natality, start anew, and it would be great if new globality meant having a new way of finding a new way of being in this world together, politically and culturally, and all other aspects also. Thanks a lot.
I'd like to make a couple of comments on what I heard by my colleagues. One is that it is true, as Professor Ronchi mentioned, that now we feel one, that we all feel the bond we have. But the problem that we are not acting on this conviction. At least governments are not acting on this conviction. The chaos, as I just mentioned, in dealing with the pandemic, shot on the dark everywhere in the world, is not very helpful. Professor Rosa also mentioned rightly that we are very powerful and also at the same time very vulnerable. And this is true. With the technology, with the new technology we have today, the choices that we have to make are in many cases fatal. If we don't care of the climate environment, if we don't get rid of nuclear weapons, we'll self-destruct. So it is a question is, yes, we do have the power, but the responsibility on our shoulders to make the right choices is absolutely awesome right now. It's also, as he said, we all know that we need to work together, to think that we are one, but we are far from that. If we look at how we react if somebody dies in Congo, for example, or in Vienna, where I am, the reaction is completely different. You know, the sense of equity is not there. The sense of oneness is not there. So we know as people that there's a lot what we have to do, but whether we're going to, after the pandemic, after we get the shot of the vaccine, continue to be to business as usual, or are we going to listen or learn some of the lessons, which are basic? It's not rocket science, that we are either going to live together or we fail one after the other. This is the basic question. And I'm not sure, learning from history, that we will quickly grasp the lesson we have learned. My fear, unless civil society mobilize, unless people start to speak up, that the paradigm right now is not the right one, that we need to have a new completely paradigm based on equity, cooperation. That's really the responsibility of the civic society. I'm not sure that the leader of the world today, as I see them at least, are capable of doing that. They are blinkered, they are short-sighted, and they don't have the vision that is required to pull us from where we are today and move us into a different, brighter horizon.
And several ideas have come forth, maybe one position in common, and it deals with the idea of collaboration, of population, of the plural side of being, but not the singular. So I think that an idea that is in common, if you agree with me, is the idea of the humanity as a whole, the idea of pluralism, the idea of collectivity versus the old idea of modernity of the individual as the measure of all things. But maybe now the measure of our humanity, of our safety, is the collaboration, is the unification of the planet. What do you think about this? Who would like to start? Yes, please, Dr. Rosa.
Yeah, I think this is very important, and we really have to think about the way, how could such a collaboration work? How could it come about, really? And I really think I have a very simple idea, namely that everyone wants to have a voice in this world and in this global cooperation, which hopefully should come about. But I really think it's very important that it's not enough that everyone has a voice. Everyone also needs to have ears to really listen to the others. I really believe, in the national democracies, as on the global level, everyone is convinced that he or she does not have enough of a voice, right? But it only works if we also have ears, and this is only a metaphor. But what I mean is that what we need is accept difference, which remains difference, right? I mean, there's always when we encounter difference on a global level, there's always the tendency to have one of two solutions. One is to do away with the difference. We are all one, but that's not true. We are very diverse. As you said, we are pluralistic. And then the idea is, but the otherness of the other is not okay. So my conception, I call it the theory of resonance, is that we need to listen to the other, but also to respond with our own voice, and thereby be transformed into the common world, which only can come about, right? So it's a process, I believe, of mutual transformation, right? We need to find a way of working in this, where we listen and answer in a way that transforms us, and I think that's the only way to really deal adequately with the differences we have in this world.
Thank you, Dr. Rosa. Who would like to also, please, share your idea? Yes, Dr. Ronchi, please.
Sì, allora io innanzitutto ringrazio il dottor ElBaradei per la lezione di realismo, no? Per la lezione di realismo che ci ha fatto, un realismo che non rinuncia alla speranza, ma che è tuttavia intriso di una forte consapevolezza di quello che accade. E poi vorrei riagganciarmi alle cose che diceva il dottor Rosa nel suo intervento. Credo che il problema che abbiamo di fronte è questo, cioè che la pandemia ha, come dire, implica una risposta politica che ha il sapore della biopolitica di cui parlava Foucault. Cioè la risposta alla pandemia è una politica del vivente, è una politica che si deve far carico dell'atto della vita, è una politica che si deve far carico della popolazione, che deve regolare dei flussi, che deve quindi lavorare sull'uomo come specie, no? E non quindi sull'individuo e la società. E questo crea evidentemente tutta una serie di problemi. Le scienze che vengono convocate al capezzale del mondo oggi sono l'epidemiologia, sono l'igiene pubblica, la medicina di base, sono la statistica, il welfare, l'assistenza sociale, cioè sono tutte quelle tecniche, no, che sono fondamentali, no, per, come dire, la gestione del vivente. E il fatto che oggi la pandemia in qualche modo richieda un intervento di questo genere è un fatto, come dire, che suscita ad esempio in alcuni filosofi molte preoccupazioni. Si pensi ad esempio alle posizioni che ha preso il mio collega italiano Giorgio Agamben a questo proposito, no? Che sono posizioni che talvolta sfiorano quasi atteggiamenti di tipo negazionisti, perché si ha il timore che la risposta biopolitica alla pandemia contribuisca a produrre come dire, una forma di dominio sul vivente. Ecco, allora io credo che una delle virtù del virus sia stata quella di farci revisionare questo paradigma, cioè di mettere in questione questa idea di biopolitica come dominio sulla vita che abbiamo ereditato dalla critica di sinistra, potremmo dire, degli anni 70 e 80 del secolo scorso. Cioè, è vero che la pandemia implica una risposta biopolitica e quindi una risposta articolata su tecnologie del vivente. Però la nuova biopolitica che è richiesta dall'evento pandemico non ha più il senso del dominio, cioè non ha più quel senso del dominio che viene del dominio dell'uomo sulla natura. Cioè l'evento pandemico, qui ha ragione benissimo il collega Rosa, l'evento pandemico ha portato alla luce un indisponibile, qualcosa che è sottratto al controllo, un impossibile, e invita la politica a misurarsi con un impossibile. Quindi deporre l'idea del dominio, deporre l'idea della padronanza per misurarsi con l'impossibile, con l'indisponibile, con ciò che sfugge al controllo. Mi verrebbe da dire, da fare una citazione freudiana, no? Freud diceva che l'arte più difficile è l'arte del governare, no? Ci sono tre cose che sono, come dire, impossibili. Le tre cose impossibili sono educare, curare e governare. Ecco, la pandemia in qualche modo porta alla luce una dimensione di impossibilità e obbliga la politica ad essere una tecnica che ha nell'impossibile il suo oggetto. E questo cambia lo statuto del discorso politico. Non più dominio, non più potere regolatore della vita, ma qualcosa che asseconda il movimento del vivente. Ecco, questa è una trasformazione positiva, io credo. È una trasformazione positiva, cioè la pandemia obbliga a ripensare le categorie della politica e a ripensare la politica e per chi voglia ancora fare politica. I leader populisti come Bolsonaro, come Trump, stanno dando una risposta politica alla pandemia oppure semplicemente non danno risposta alla pandemia, cioè non fanno politica. Ecco, io credo che la pandemia ci obblighi sul piano planetario a dare una risposta politica che ha a che fare con il governo di ciò che, come si diceva molto bene prima, sfugge alla possibilità del controllo. ma che tuttavia dobbiamo governare. Ecco, questo cambiamento di paradigma è molto importante e riguarda in qualche modo il nostro futuro, riguarda in qualche modo come dire, una possibile nuova era che si può aprire.
Dr. ElBaradei, please.
I think what we see that, as we all, I think, agree that we have a crisis of governance, both at the national level and at the international level. Life has evolved in such a way with technology, with knowledge, that our paradigm for national governance is no longer able to cope with people's hopes and expectations. There's a lot of disenchantment right now that people feel, as mentioned, that they are not adequately represented, that their voices are not being heard. We saw that in Italy, of course, the Five Stars Party, all the other in Germany, alternative Germany. I mean, there is a lot of disenchantment from the left and the right, which means that we need to look for a new paradigm at the national level. At the international level, that's even worse, because now, as we mentioned, all our problems are interconnected. And yet, as we look at the institutions, all the institutions we have, they are dysfunctional. They don't have the resources, they don't have the authority, and the mentality of the participant that is still what is in it for me. It's not that what we can do together, not understanding that without working together, we're going nowhere. So, but how, I mean, the question, of course, we all agree to that, how we start in embarking on a new paradigm. Is it top-down approach or is it bottom-up approach? I think it's frankly, to me, it's a bottom-up approach. I don't have right now much confidence in the current leadership around the world. I mean, look what's happening at the US right now. I mean, it makes you depressed. It is acting like a banana republic. This is the bastion of democracy. So we still need to, I think, mobilize at the civil society level. But the key is how to organize, frankly, how we can organize and understand, how we can unify, organize, have a clear objectives and work together. We manage somehow in the case of climate change. Can we do it in a much larger scope, trying to have a new paradigm for governance, a democracy O2, a new democracy, type of democracy, where people feel that they are represented, but they are also participating. A new combination of participation and active participation and representation, I think, is required. In the case of global governance, I think we need to reinvent all the institutions. If I look, and this is an area where I worked for long years, the United Nations is becoming completely marginalized. They're supposed to lead us into this global paradigm, but it's completely dysfunctional right now. People are fighting each other like cats and dogs. And so I think we all agree on what needs to be done. The issue is how to do it, and can we do it?
Thank you, Dr. ElBaradei. It's very important that all of you converge into one common idea, and it's the idea of trying to take down the illusion of dominion. But at the same time, we are seeing several countries that are maybe thinking that they can provide a sense of safety for their population, just with the opposite. For instance, the United Kingdom just 2 days ago announced that they're going to raise their spending in defense in 24.1 billion more pounds for defense. And you very well know, as Dr. ElBaradei said, how, for instance, in the public discourse in the United States, they tend to say the China virus. And several other countries are really reinforcing the idea of walls that Dr. Ronchi, for instance, said. The inability, I mean, what does a wall can do if you think that the virus is something that humans share and is not going to be controlled? But at the same time, we are seeing maybe dangerous rising of these national discourse ideas. So maybe the virus could be seen as a pretext, as a legitimizing discourse of the need of dominion. But as Dr. Rosa said in the beginning, I mean, of course, it's an illusion, the dominion. This is a virus. This is a humanity as a whole problem. But what do you think about the responses of several countries regarding this?
For me?
Yes, please, Dr. ElBaradei.
Well, the response is depressing. I mean, if you look around how we have coped with the virus, it's completely shot in the dark. Everyone is doing. If you look at Italy, how they are coping, comparing with Spain, comparing with Germany, South Korea, the US, everybody, there is no unified approach. I mean, this is a virus. As Professor Ronchi said, it affects every single one of us, black, white, and red. And yet we are not able to work together to cope with a virus that's threatening a good chunk of our humanity. I mean, this is not political, yet somehow we politicized it. Somehow we made it as if, who is going to have the first vaccine, rather than who is going to get access to the vaccine, instead of how to make sure that the distribution of vaccine is going to be equal, or based on needs. We are, as I said, we are showing the worst in us, frankly, right now. I mean, I don't want to over dramatize, but what you see around, we are not showing the best in us. We are showing the worst in the human nature. The being selfish, being myopic, unable to work together. And I would hope that at the end of the day, maybe in a couple of months or 6 months after the vaccine is there, the medication is there, that we sit around and see how foolish we have dealt with the pandemic, how many people died as a result of our ineptness, incompetence, and take it from there and try to learn some lessons. I still hope that this might be a turning point, a launching pad for a new paradigm that is at least rational, that is at least scientifically based, that's at least based on compassion. But right now, what you see is really ugly, frankly, to me.
Thank you, Dr. ElBaradei. Yes, Dr. Rosa, please.
I totally agree with this. I think everyone gets kind of depressed when you look at as you said in the beginning of your talk, but everyone gets depressed when looking at the current political state of the world in particular. But for me, it's very important to see that the future is not determined, right? I mean, because I'm a sociologist, right? So a lot of journalists always ask me, what will the next steps be? What will come out of the pandemic? And I always reply, well, there is no sociological model or economic model or whatever kind of model, right, that predicts what the future will be. That's why I insist on natality by Hannah Arendt. It's open. The future is open. It depends on what we do. And of course, what we see is egoistic, particularistic, and frankly, quite stupid national answers. And I think stupid right-wing populism is on the rise because of the promise that we'll do it. We'll just do it, right? Johnson, Trump, whoever it is, they promise that they ignore the markets, they ignore the law, they ignore the media, they just do it, right? But so I think what we need to do is just I mean, it's so obvious. We have at least two global threats. We talked about this. One is global warming. The other is the global virus. And as ElBaradei, of course, knows best, right? We do have institutions which are meant to deal with this. For example, the World Health Organization, the WHO, is exactly the instrument with which humanity can react to a global threat. Now, the interesting, I'm not surprised that people like Trump, Bolsonaro, Modi, or Johnson don't turn to the WHO, but I think we as academics and as human beings, right, we should very strongly insist that there's only, I mean, there is either a global answer or no answer, as both of you, I think, said, right? So what surprises me is not the reaction we see from national governments, but from the civil society. Why is there not an outcry that what we need right now is the WHO and is the United Nations organization, which of course needs to be reorganized? I think if there is an open future, we have the obligation as academics to and politicians to insist on this level of dealing with the threat.
Thank you. Dr. Ronchi.
Il dottor ElBaradei diceva che in questa situazione, lo diceva con una certa amarezza che mi ha colpito, e anche alla luce di un'esperienza che chiaramente di ben alto livello, insomma, che come dire, la classe politica sta dando il peggio di se stessa e non il meglio di se stessa. E che quindi, come dire, prevale un sentimento pessimistico da questo punto di vista. In qualche modo anche le cose che diceva adesso il dottor Rosa andavano sostanzialmente in questa direzione, sebbene appunto insistesse sulla questione del carattere aperto, no? Del carattere aperto e indeterminato del futuro. Ecco, allora io vorrei chiudere il mio intervento proprio con una riflessione su questo nuovo paradigma della politica, no? Perché qui è, come dire, un tema che è emerso, no? È la necessità di un nuovo paradigma della politica, cioè di un nuovo modo di concepire la politica e l'arte del governo, soprattutto, e l'arte del governo, che sia all'altezza dell'evento epocale che stiamo vivendo, no? E mi verrebbe da dire che questo nuovo paradigma della politica, che in qualche modo, ecco, io sono un po' più ottimista, cioè io lo vedo in qualche modo agente, operante all'interno almeno nei confini europei, in alcuni casi. Questo nuovo paradigma della politica, che è all'altezza dell'evento che stiamo vivendo, in realtà un paradigma molto antico. Un paradigma molto antico, cioè mi pare che l'evento pandemico richieda la ripresa di un'idea classica della politica, di un'idea antica della politica. Quell'idea della politica che Platone metaforizzava con l'arte cibernetica. L'arte cibernetica, kyubernao in greco significa pilotare, no? L'arte cibernetica è l'arte del pilota della nave, no? E l'idea che emergeva da Platone, da certi pensatori classici, era l'idea che l'arte del governo dovesse essere analoga all'arte del pilota della nave, no? E il pilota della nave è qualcuno che non domina gli elementi, non impone agli elementi la propria volontà, non è padrone del possibile. È qualcuno che deve assecondare un elemento, deve assecondare un movimento, regolarsi su dei movimenti, inflettere questi movimenti, piegarli, dargli una direzione, ma lo può fare solo perché è una parte di quella natura che vorrebbe regolare e controllare. A me pare che questa sia un'idea molto, molto potente della politica, sia quello che forse ci manca oggi, no? Cioè ci manca l'idea di un'arte della politica come arte non del possibile, come si suole dire abitualmente, no? La definizione classica della politica come arte del possibile, no? Il fenomeno pandemico ci costringe a pensare una politica, ci obbliga a pensare una politica come arte dell'impossibile. come una tecnica che si confronta con un elemento che per definizione sfugge al controllo, che per definizione è, come dire, al di fuori di ciò che noi possiamo fare. Ecco, questa idea della politica come arte dell'impossibile, io credo che sia richiesta, sia convocata, sia quello di cui abbiamo bisogno, no? Come nuovo paradigma della politica per essere all'altezza di un evento planetario come l'evento pandemico. Non so se nelle varie cancellerie del mondo sia presente, operante quest'idea. So però che se si vuole far fronte alla crisi, se si vuole in qualche modo condurre la barca, no? Bisogna in qualche modo optare per la virtù politica, no? La virtù politica, secondo il grande filosofo e teorico della politica italiano Machiavelli, era proprio questa, cioè la virtù politica era la virtù del principe, era la virtù del governo. E la virtù del governo è una virtù cibernetica, è la virtù di condurre la barca, come dire, ricondurre la barca conducendola su un elemento che è assolutamente riottoso ad essere dominato. Ecco, io credo che questa possa essere in qualche modo una possibile apertura, una possibile apertura a che la pandemia ci possa produrre in qualche modo una via d'uscita in direzione di un nuovo modo di fare politica che si assume sulle spalle questo elemento che è l'elemento della natura vista nella sua dimensione più incontrollabile, la stessa con la quale dobbiamo misurarci se vogliamo affrontare la questione del cambiamento climatico, no? È la stessa identica questione. Ma sono come dire delle scommesse alle quali non possiamo più sottrarci.
I think we are on the verge of something new. I think we agree that we are on the verge of something new. As Antonio Gramsci mentioned, I think at one point, that the old is dying, but the new is not born yet. I think that's really where we are. You know, it's an area which is dangerous area because the old is on its way out, but the new is not there yet. I also, should end with some note of optimism. I think Professor Rosa referred to Hannah Arendt, who said that we can have a new start, or the future is open for us, and I think that's correct. We can completely forget the past and just embark on a new beginning. Just a question, as I said, how to organize, how to start. I think that's a challenge that is facing all of us. Politicians, lawyers, philosophers, how to move into a new, better, humane paradigm.
Thank you, Dr. ElBaradei. You brilliantly summarized up their ideas. I would like to thank the three of you for your time, your patience, and your generosity, for sharing your ideas with the whole people. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.